What's up, fanatics? Did you hear that door slamming shut and the lock turning? That's the door to the MLB 2027 season and the players being locked out. I'm Tim Clark, and you're listening to the Musings of a Sports Fanatic, a podcast found exclusively here at PennSports.live. So we'll get to my thoughts on the coming salary cap, baseball in general, and see what else we can dig into. But as always, I want to give a shout out to FeedSpot. I've been in their rankings, and it's a cool site. If you're interested, let me give them, almost forgot their applause for FeedSpot. So check out their website, all kinds of cool podcasts that you can find at FeedSpot. And also a reminder that you can find my podcast not only at PennSports.live, but you can go to my YouTube channel at TrojanTim66. And I wonder why that is. And find a podcast there as well. Yeah, so I'm going to get into the trade deadline, but the Dodgers, made the big move. Oh, surprise, surprise, in trading for Tarek Skubal, two-time defending Cy Young Award winner from Detroit. Didn't give up a mint, to be quite honest. He wanted to go to LA, and so Detroit acquiesced that. But the point is, like there were other teams could have made better offers. No, he was going to L.A. He was always going to go to L.A. Just like all the good players are in L.A. And it's the final nail. I wrote my column this week at PennSports.live. It's the final nail in the salary cap coffin. I guess that the salary cap's going to come out of the MLB current system being slammed shut. That coffin's being slammed shut. This was the final move. I mean, if there was any doubt, this just emphasized that you've currently got a system where one team reaps all the benefits. They have a bigger TV market, and I know some people say, "Well, they got a better they got a better deal because they're in LA. They're going to get a better deal in LA than in Pittsburgh, than in Milwaukee, than in Cleveland, right? So in Tampa." So of course they got a better TV deal. They were bailed out when they filed for bankruptcy, and they're still getting a check for that. And the biggest thing that is a problem with the Dodgers system, and by the way, they got Friedman as a GM that they poached from Tampa. He's one of the best, if not the best. They can develop their own talent. They're good at it. They're shrewd with their moves. So if a salary cap came into play, it's not like the Dodgers would suddenly, oh, well, everyone else is now going to be even. No, the Dodgers still do things better than everyone else. It would just balance the playing field so that they can't go out and buy this player, buy this player, buy this player. And then defer. That's what I was starting to say. This is the biggest problem with the Dodgers system, is that they defer billions of dollars in contracts for 20 years, 25 years down the road. It's the Bobby Bonilla syndrome. And that, to me, is the most egregious thing out of any of this. But, it is what it is. And the owners have finally figured out our system is broken. Our sport is broken. Every other major sports league has some form of salary cap. And this notion that the players have that it's going to stifle player salary, Bryce Harper will still get gigantic contracts. Paul Skeens, unless he keeps pitching like he is this year, more on that later, will get a giant contract. They're just not all going to get the giant contract from the Los Angeles Dodgers or the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox. It's going to spread out the talent more. That's what salary caps do. And I said in my column, there's a myriad of reasons that the NFL is a superior product and is the number one sport in America. But one of the things that makes them so successful is that the Arizona Cardinals can come into a season and think they're going to win. Now, probably not this year, but you get my point. Pittsburgh has won 6 Super Bowls in little old Pittsburgh. Green Bay, how many do they have? 3, 4 Super Bowls, something like that, in little old Milwaukee. Um, and then you have the Jets, who are in a big market but are run like a slop station, and they don't win. And that's what it should be. If you're a well managed team and a well coached team, then you'll have success. It won't be based on, well, we bought all the players. Right now in Major League Baseball, Tampa Bay and Milwaukee are the two best examples of small markets that um, succeed. Milwaukee and Tampa too have been succeeding now for years. Milwaukee's made the playoffs. What is it? 7 in a row, 7 seasons in a row, something like that. But they don't win the big one. And here's the thing. So everyone, I saw like Oni and some of the guys, Rosenthal, some of those. Milwaukee. Why didn't they go get Scooble? He didn't want to come to Milwaukee. Um, it would have forced Milwaukee to pony up double what Los Angeles paid for Scooble. And then is Milwaukee going to be able to sign Scooble? Probably not, because they don't have that money. The Dodgers do. Milwaukee and Tampa, when they make a mistake in free agency, it really burns them. If the Dodgers make a mistake in free agency, they sweep that guy away and they go sign someone else, or they go trade for someone else. When one of the good pitchers for Milwaukee or Tampa gets hurt, it crushes their rotation. When one of the Dodgers' good pitchers gets hurt, they have another guy. Now they have Scuba. They're about 6 or 7 deep when everyone's healthy. That's the difference. That's the difference. Everyone's not on equal footing. And if you can't see that, you're either intentionally being blind because you're a Dodgers fan or a Yankees fan or a big market team, or you're just willfully stupid. Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what I just explained is absolutely 100% true. And just like I said, the Dodgers will still be fine in a salary cap setting. And a team like the Pirates, if they continue to be mismanaged, I think Cherington has done slightly. He still signed Marcell Ozuna, which I told you, by the way, was a bad signing. He's done fractionally better here in the last calendar year. Some good, the Brandon Lau trade with Tampa, and that was a great trade. But they've been generally mismanaged during Cherington's era. And if that continues, and even though, here's the other thing, cheap owners right now are going to continue to be cheap. In a salary cap, with the cap comes a floor, and they will be forced to spend to a certain amount. Now, they may still spend unwisely, and that's what I'm saying. Ben Cherington, for most of his tenure in Pittsburgh, it's been bad. And salary cap won't change that. If you're poorly run, like the New York Jets, for example, if you're poorly run, you will continue to not succeed. But if you are well run, like Milwaukee and Tampa, now all of a sudden Milwaukee and Tampa say, oh, wait a second. So when we get to the playoffs, we don't have to try and beat Mr. Super Team out in LA, an all-star team, essentially. We're going to be playing, everyone's going to be on equal footing. So a salary cap, as something came up on my screen, a salary cap is going to fix that part of it and put everyone on equal footing. And I think the owners have finally figured it out. Bob Nutting better be screaming from the mountaintops for this, or he's going to look like a fool again, which he's good at. But a guy like Nutting, the guy in Milwaukee, the ownership in Tampa, all those small markets should be crying from the mountaintops. because even I've heard even the Dodgers owner kind of admitted it this year, like this it's we got to fix how this is run. The Cubs ownership, I think, is on board. Like some of the bigger markets are even on board now. It's going to happen finally, and it might require a lockout because the players in their union and guys like Scott Boras, who is is bad for the sport. Now, if I'm a player, I want Scott Boras being my agent. He does his job well, but he's a blight on the sport, and he pumps it into he's in everyone's ear in that players union, and all the other owners, or I'm sorry, all the other agents like him are in their players' ears, telling them that the salary cap is going to restrict their earnings, and it's not. It's just going to spread them out. They won't all be on the same three teams. So here for a salary cap in baseball. All right, I'm gonna not paying attention to my notes. Let's jump in the time machine. Let's see what's cooking in the 8-track player this week. Electric Light Orchestra. Don't bring me down, Bruce. Um, Going back to the 70s for that one, which really was the 8-track era, into the 80s a little bit. I fudge it some weeks, but yeah, that was in the 8-track player this week. Don't bring me down, ELO. So the last two work stoppages in baseball. This is, by the way, pretty much an all baseball podcast until we get to the end. Anyway, 1994, it was the players that walked out and went on strike because the owners in 1994, boys and girls, you youngins, the owner said, let's talk salary cap, and the players said, let's not. 232 days. They lost the 1994 World Series, and no salary cap. The result was no salary cap. So that could make you nervous for this year, saying well, the owners want to miss an entire season. I think this year, I think they finally reached the saturation point where, yes, I think hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully the players come to their senses, but I think they would. But yeah, 232 days in 1994, and I think the argument could be made that that was the first downturn for baseball in its popularity. I think it was still riding pretty high up until that point, and then you essentially lost the bulk of a season in the playoffs and World Series. And I think some people, not everyone, like I'm a baseball fan, but some people say, I'm not coming back. I didn't really miss it. Yeah, it didn't bother me a bit. Summer, I had other stuff to do. So I think they lost some of their casual fans at that point, and it kind of started that trend in baseball, kind of losing some popularity. And then the last time was 2022, which this may have happened without you even knowing it because it was over the winter. It was a 99-day lockout by the owners that ended March 10th. So it pushed back free agency and some things of that nature. Of course, moves couldn't be made while there was a lockout. but it didn't affect games in the season. So it was a little less egregious to the fans. Like I said, you may not even remember it happening in 2022 because it was in the off season. But so we've gone down this road a couple times in modern history, and I think we're headed that way. To jump back out of the time machine, I think we're headed that way again. Um, this coming off season, and it's desperately needed. As much as I don't want to see a season missed or half a season missed, this has to happen to have the sport become um, what it could be and become more popular. So, all right. So I said about the trade deadline. Um, it's come and gone, and did it help your team? Did it not help your team? I think all those things are sort of up for debate. Um, I think it's interesting. Of course, the Dodgers signing Tarek Skubal is it's certainly not going to hurt the Dodgers' chances any. Um, so let's look at some of the other teams. Milwaukee sort of got uh, grilled a little bit by the experts, air quotes. They went out and got Dusty May or is it Dustin May? I always thought it was Dusty May. I think they were saying Dustin May. Whoever. Um, Banjo guy from St. Louis he was in LA before that, and Jojo Romero for their bullpen. And then they got Sensatella, Della, Ella, Della, Sella, guy from Colorado. Now, I watched them against the Pirates this week, and Sensa, whatever, looked good. But this week, I would have looked good pitching against the Pirates. So I don't know that we should totally base it on that just yet. But um, look, Milwaukee's got the best record in baseball. And I'm telling you, I think, and I look, you'd have to ask the Milwaukee ownership, GM. I don't know. I said I thought maybe the lockout would hit like back teams off a little bit because do you want to get maybe a rental would be okay, but do you want to get a guy that's got another year on his contract when next year might be wiped out? And then I said also, and I used last week when I talked about it, I used Milwaukee as the example. When you've got the specter of the Dodgers in the playoffs hanging over your head, do you really want to go crazy and potentially maybe not gut your farm system, but really dig into your farm system to bring in some guys and still lose to the Dodgers? And maybe Milwaukee looked at it and said, "Look, we're going to get a couple bullpen arms. Maybe can help, a little bit in the rotation. Our offense has been pretty good, and they do it differently. They run the bases well. Watching Milwaukee is so fun because they do everything right. They throw to the right bases. They play solid defense. Like I said, they run the bases well. They bunt occasionally. They hit guys over when they should, and then when they need, they pop the occasional home run. They've got some good gap hitters, a lot of double guys. Maybe they looked at it and said, you know what, we're pretty darn good as is. Best record in baseball. So I didn't have a problem with them not doing a whole lot at the trade deadline. Braves were kind of in that ballpark too. I don't think the Braves. I don't know. The Braves have, first of all, they got to get Acuna to be healthy and stay healthy if they want to have any chance. But they are running away from the Phillies at this point, so it certainly looks like they're going to win the Eastern Division. Um, and I believe they have a better record. The Dodgers only have the third best record in the National League. So the Braves not doing anything. They did. I mean, for the record, they did some small things, but. And then Boston really coughed up a mint to get Adley Rutschman, the catcher from Baltimore, who is currently hurt. So they got to get him healthy and get him behind the plate. And the hope is that he can get back. He wanted out of Baltimore. I didn't realize that, but the more you heard the conversations and the talk around that, it sounded like he wanted to get out of Baltimore. I heard people saying Gunnar Henderson will never re-sign in Baltimore. Um, Baltimore's window was like open. I'm sure, boy, then it shut real quick again. Um, and what's ironic, if Baltimore was in the American League West, they'd be a game and a half out. And instead, they sold at the deadline, kind of throwing up the white flag saying we're done for this year. But Reutemann to the Red Sox. Now, again, Baltimore got a lot of potentially good players in that deal. Potential, key word. But um, Boston's go for it. Look, I'm going to get to that in a minute, but Boston went from the outhouse to the penthouse in one heck of a hurry this year, and so they added some pieces, Reutemann being the big one, to their lineup. Yankees made some moves. Astros got Varsho, I believe, right, from Toronto. Um, so there were some moves made. Seattle, Cleveland made some moves, and they needed to. Minnesota made a move. So there, a lot of those teams. And then let's come to the two locals and talk a little bit more in depth about the Phillies and the Pirates at the trade deadline. It certainly looks like the Phillies helped themselves at the deadline, and guess what? So did the Pirates. But the Pirates are in the tank, and I'm going to get to that. But the Pirates made adding Luke Weaver, the kid Bachler from Miami, who's got 4 years, by the way. So even if there's a lockout, you still have him for a couple more years after this year. By the way, the Mets paying a decent chunk of Weaver's contract, which I think Bob Nutting may have had to change his underwear when he heard that they were going to throw in some money. And Yates was a rental for this year. He's an older guy. You're probably not going to have him back next year, but you gave up next to nothing for him. And they really the biggest prospect they gave away was Sammy Stafora, the number 9 prospect who they got from Cincinnati. So essentially, Brian Hayes got them this year and next year of Luke Weaver. I'll take it out because Brian Hayes, despite the fact that he hit a home run off the Pirates last series, he stinks beyond stinks, and so what a good move that would. Like I said, Ben Cherington has come up smelling like a rose more often than not this year, which is hard to believe, but. So the Pirates again. I'll get to their free fall here in a second, but those were good moves. Those were good moves. Now I said all along those are moves that should have happened. Oh God, there's the Mets. There's the other thing. When you're going bad, everything goes against you. And the Pirates, the Mets leadoff guy just hit a bloop bleeder down the left field line that no one could get to for a double. Um, Anyway, sorry about the regret getting into my TV there. I would have preferred the Pirates making these deals, but maybe those deals weren't available to them. I don't know that they may not have been available. So those are good moves. Phillies, I thought they would try and get Taylor Ward, the outfielder, to fix their revolving door in right field. Instead, they went, and maybe Don Mattingly had some kind of say in this. Luis Arise from San Francisco, who was going somewhere, is a perennial 300 hitter that doesn't strike out. And Phillies fans probably didn't, when they saw that, they were probably like, what is that animal? I've never seen that animal in the Philadelphia Wild before. All of our animals strike out or hit home runs. So a guy that can actually get on base to set up your big hitters, what a novel idea. And the early returns have been fantastic for the Phillies with Luis Arise. Now, here's where I question the Phillies. And they didn't really they really didn't help themselves with the pitching too much, especially with the bullpen. I see Painter's back up in the rotation, but But that aside, the Arise thing. So my first thought was they'll bump Stott over the shortstop and get Trey Turner, whose glove is god awful, out back out to the outfield, and then Arise will play second base. Arise was going to play second base one way or the other, but instead, what they did, and the other thing they could have done is bump Stott to third base, which they did, and benched Alec Boehm, which would have got the biggest cheer of the season in Philadelphia. But instead, they're moving like 18 guys to 18 different positions. So Luis Ariz is going to play second. Stott is going to bump over the third, but Baum's going to bump over the first, and then Bryce Harper's going to go out to right field. Here's the problem with that. No one knows if Bryce Harper, when push comes to shove and they need to throw someone out at third base or home plate, no one is quite sure whether he's going to be able to throw that ball to third base or to home, because he's got the bum arm, which is why he got moved into first base in the first place. So I thought that was weird. Now, I get it. Bryce Harper, and I've said this, I've said it a million times, he'll run through a wall for you. And so I'm sure he convinced them, look, I'll be fine. Put me out there. Now, here's the only thing about Alec Boehm, and I was with some buddies on the golf course today. More on that later too, but they hate him, and they're all Phillies fans, and they hate him. They're like, you have to get rid of. I will say he's got a lot of RBIs for a guy hitting 230 or 220 or whatever it is. And obviously, his glove will hurt you less at first base than it will at third base. So I will say that for him. But I really did think he was, you put him on the bench, get Turner out of shortstop. One of those two things, either Bohm going to the bench or Turner going to the outfield, and neither of those happened. But like I said, so far so good for the Phillies. But in the grand scheme of things, they're still 5-5 in their last 10. They're kind of treading water. The Cubs have screamed past them in the wild card standings. But I think the Arise deal, just that by itself, is certainly a plus for the Phillies because they don't have any hitters like that. Like I said, the fans are probably like, what is this? Like, he always hits the ball. He always puts it in play. That's odd to us. So a good move for the Phillies. So, the trade deadline, I don't know. Again, I sorry to sound like a broken record, but the Skubal trade probably is the biggest impact trade that there was. It maybe if Reichman comes back healthy in Boston, that becomes a bigger trade, bigger bonus for Boston. But the Skubal trade was clearly the big trade. I didn't mention San Diego made some smaller moves. Most of the other things were smaller moves, but we'll see how that all plays out. So looking at baseball right now, as we've now screamed into August, and we're at about the 50 game mark left, a little under 50 games. So it's put up or shut up time. And in the American League, now I'm going to go back to Boston. Boston looks like the team to beat now because no one has really jumped out in the American League. My God, the American League West is. Now there's an infield single against the Pirates. Good gracious. The Astros are coming on, and I always say, I said it last year, and then they didn't quite make. They've got still a lot of good hitters. They've got it's not a bad team. To me, their record should be better than it is, and so they're leading that division, but they're still only a couple games above 500. The White Sox are still leading the American League Central, and I don't think they're going away. I think if Cleveland or Minnesota wants to win that division, I think specifically Cleveland, you're going to have to go out and get on a streak and take it from them. So that leaves the teams in the American League East who have been the best all year long. I think Tampa is going to be a tough out in the playoffs. You never know about the Yankees. They're kind of hit or miss. they got to get Judge back. And if they can get Judge back and get him into a groove before the playoffs, then the Yankees will be a tough out. But I'll be darned if, I mean, let's face it, after, I don't know what the date was specifically, but what, maybe like the middle of June. Um, and now the center fielder drops a line drive. It would have been a tough catch, but um, oh, God. Um, Boston is easily the best team in baseball, easily. And sometimes that train gets rolling. Now, there's 2 months of the season left, a little less. Um, they could get cold again. That happens. But if they can keep this going, now they've won 8 straight after winning 15 straight a while back. I'd be putting my money on the Red Sox right now. And if you would have told me in May that sentence would come out of my mouth in August, I'd have said you were out of your tree. But here we sit, and no one else has really stepped up to say, "Hey, we're that team," other than maybe Tampa. So I mean, I think the Red Sox have got to be the favorite in the American League right now. In the National League, like I said, it's Milwaukee, Atlanta, and LA. And even though LA only has the third best record, let's face it, that is an all-star roster. And when you get into the playoffs, they're going to be tough to get out. Um, I think the Cubs. There's one I didn't mention, so let me do it now. My brain skipped over it. The Cubs made a lot of good moves at the deadline. Clay Holmes, they got a bunch of pitchers, which they needed. They released Jameson Tyone, great guy, but his career looks like it's waning. And so I think the Cubs are going to be a tough out, boys and girls. I don't like Pete Crow Armstrong, but I'll admit he's the best player in baseball this year. Yes, Shohei, he should win the MVP, not you. Um, Not that you're having some slouch of a season, but Pete Crow Armstrong is the real deal in Chicago, and I think they're going to be a tough out. And you know, I I think they're going to be the top wild card. And I don't think it's a done deal that Milwaukee has the Central Division clinched just yet. I think Chicago could still have something to say about that. Then it gets interesting. Right now, it looks like the Phillies and Diamondbacks, um, but San Diego's coming, and so I don't think the Nationals or the Marlins or the Cardinals or the Pirates or the Reds now. The Pirates are behind the Reds. I don't think any of those. I think this comes down to does San Diego get hot, which we've been waiting for all season. Does Philly get cold? Does Arizona get cold? Who made, by the way, no moves. They decided to go status quo. Um, but I think that those 3 teams, that's going to be an interesting. Someone's going to be the odd man out come playoff time. But um, we'll see. I think Arizona has a really nice ball club, but I think San Diego has a nice ball club. And look, the Phillies do too. But the Phillies, to me, still have the same issues that they had, other than a rise does give them one table setter that they didn't have. But the bullpen trying to get to Duran is a problem, and so we'll see, and the fourth and fifth starters still a problem. So we'll see on the Phillies, but they're sitting okay right now. So the Pittsburgh Pirates, that's my team, and it's over. Pirates fans, you can pack up the bags. The season's over. It stayed interesting longer, which makes, I think, this season more frustrating. As Pirate fans, look, we're so used to the season being over by mid-June. You're like, yeah, okay. And I'm a glutton for punishment. I still watch the games, and I still will watch the games. That's why I'm complaining at my TV right now. But the season's over, and it's threefold. Let's make it fourfold. the two that I told you about from day one, from spring training, have stood true. They have stood the test of time this season. The defense is atrocious. Nick Gonzalez, I, I've waited since Freddie Sanchez for the Pirates to have a guy that's a legitimate 300 hitter. There are so few of them in Major League Baseball nowadays. Nick Gonzalez is one of them. He's just a pure hitter. He hits the baseball. He's not going to hit a lot of home runs, but he's just going to get hits. I've waited so long for that. And Nick Gonzalez's defense and lack of baseball acumen makes him, in my mind, he's almost unplayable, if not unplayable. And you look into next year, and I know the theory was, well, you'll move him back to second base because they're not going to sign Brandon Lau. My viewpoints have changed from week to week with the Pirates. And I don't think they're going to be able to afford Brandon Lau, but it'd be worth a run at this point. I'm not sure you can roster Nick Gonzalez next year. Everyone's like, well, put him back in his natural spot. He sucked at second base, too. And then last night, he gets picked off twice, or not picked off, but doubled off twice in a single game, doubled off on line drive fly balls. His baseball IQ is -3. He can hit. He's a one-trick pony. He can hit. He can't field. He doesn't think things through, like that play where he threw it to second base a couple weeks ago and they end up losing that game when every human in the world would have thrown the ball to first base. The game would have been over, shake hands and move on. And instead he threw it to second, even though Brandon Lau wasn't even to the bag to cover it. He's got no baseball IQ. And no defense. I don't know that you can roster Nick Gonzalez next year. So I don't know that the second base position, I think everyone thought it was going to be one or the other. Hey, maybe they'll re-sign Lau. And then as the season went on, he's hitting 1 million home runs. They won't be able to afford him. Although with the salary cap, maybe that changes the mindset a little bit. And then the other half of the people were like, well, no, we'll just let Lau go and move Gonzalez back there. I don't know that you can roster him. So the defense, going back to my original point, so the defense has been woeful. The bullpen was awful. Now, it looks pretty good right now. Montgomery finally got things straightened out. He's a man amongst boys at this point in time. Even with Luke Weaver coming over, I think Montgomery's my closer. But Luke Weaver is a late inning leverage guy. Bacher is maybe a multi-inning guy. Now you bump Soto maybe to the 6th and 7th. That's what they've been using them for. Johan Ramirez is still around, and you added Yates, who's maybe a 7th inning kind of guy. So that bullpen, now we haven't seen them all pitch. Bachler, whatever his name is, gave up a run. Was it yesterday, I guess? But and I'm forgetting Doval that they got, who's a big arm and has closer stuff. So their bullpen now on paper is really good, but it killed them all season long. So there's two prongs of what killed their season. Prong 3 is the injuries. And I know the old saying, and it's true, every team has injuries, every team has to deal with it. But the Pirates, it was just one after another, after another, after another. And it was offensive guys. We've waited, how many years? 4 for O'Neal Cruz to finally figure out that you can't hit 200 and strike out a billion times. And you can't hit just 20 home runs if you're O'Neal Cruz, who can hit a ball to the moon, I think. He figured it out this year. He was on pace for 30-plus home runs. He was on pace to hit 250, maybe even 255, 260. Exactly what we've been waiting for from him, and he gets hurt. Connor Griffin would have been, although I think the kid in Cincinnati is going to clearly be the rookie of the year, and I can't stand him, but deservedly so. South Stewart, but Griffin would have been at least in the conversation. He's got a sweet swing. He's going to be a good player. He's missed more of the season than he's been available. Horowitz went down, who at the time was hitting 280, getting on base, driving some runs in. O'Hearn now is hurt for the second time this season, who was 17 homers, 59 RBI, something like that. Now, Mitch Keller's hurt too. I don't know that we can sit and argue that hurts them, although maybe that's why he was pitching so poorly the last month, that he had arm trouble. But offensively, and then Andy Rodriguez, if you want to throw him in, who has been better offensively, certainly, than Henry Davis. Now, he can't catch to save his life, which is typical Pirate problem. So those injuries finally caught up to them. And the last month, and here's how they covered it. A guy they nicknamed the Magician, as Maryland Valdez, 22-year-old rookie, came back up after he struggled the first time he was in Pittsburgh, came back up and set the world on fire. Won Rookie of the Month in July. What was it? He's up to 15 home runs or 4, whatever it is. And I knew it was coming. And then, the announcers keep, I don't know if it's just wishful thinking, Greg Brown and the gang, the Magician. No, he's hit the wall. Which there was nothing in his MO that said he was going to be, a 50 home run guy, at least not yet. Maybe as he develops, but if you had common sense, you were saying to yourself, this guy's going to level out. Well, he's more than leveled out. He's bottomed out. I think he's back in the lineup. Well, he is. I know he's back in the lineup tonight. He had one day off, but he needed at least one day off just to get himself right. He still walks a lot. I think he's going to be okay. I'm not saying that he's going to turn into a bum for the rest of his career. I think he's got a good approach at the plate, which will serve him well in being able to come out of slumps and not have it be so drastic. But he's slumped. Brian Reynolds is in a big quagmire right now. And he had been hot. Brandon Lau had cooled off. He has started to pick it up again. Because that's why I said maybe you offer him as a trade piece because he had cooled off, but he has picked up the pace again. So, and then Marcell Ozuna finally got released. Thank God. I told you from day one, I thought that was a ridiculous signing. At the time, I said if it was between him and McCutchen, McCutchen would have given you far better production and could actually go out and play defense if you need him to. And as bad as McCutchen was, and he's not even in the major leagues right now, he opted out of his minor league contract the other day. I still think he would have given you more production than what Mr. 200 did, Marcell Ozuna. So the offense has gone in the tank. That's prong 3. And prong 4 is the starting pitching has been disappointing in general. I thought Bubba Chandler would be – I'm not saying he was going to be the next – about the injuries and about some of the other starters. And, I didn't even mention Mitch Keller not panning out and the bullpen being bad until the trade deadline here. And the defense, all that stuff, they would still be right in the wild card hunt if Paul Skeens was pitching like Paul Skeens. He's not pitching like Paul Skeens. He's pitching like Joe Friday, the number 4 starter for the Rockies. His ERA looks like it over the last 2 months. He can't throw strikes consistently. He admitted that he's not putting guys away because he can't throw strikes. There are too many 3-ball counts. I've said that for the last 3 months. Go back and listen on the podcast. For 3 months, I've been telling you my biggest issue with him is he's throwing too many non-competitive pitches that no batter is going to swing at. And so the swings and misses are down, the foul balls are up, and the hard contact is up. It wasn't at the beginning of the year, but it is now. And I'm not so sure they shouldn't shut him down at this point. He won't admit it. I don't know if there is some type of arm issue. Um, Mechanics, I don't know if that stupid World Classic thing wrecked him for the season because they did have to get ramped up early, real early. And he was throwing full bore at that thing. I don't know what it is. Only he would be able to tell you, or maybe a doctor if it's an injury. I told you I think he's gotten a little too big for his britches, and I still believe that. I think his girlfriend likes him to be part of her world and in her orbit, which of course, that's they're in a relationship, but the all the social media stuff that she's into, and now he's shooting commercials left and right, and that to me has been the biggest issue for the Pirates season this year. Um, Now, I told you from day one the defense and the bullpen. That has not taken me by surprise. The offense was way better than I ever thought it would be. So the fact that they've come back to earth and are suffering through these injuries, um, I didn't think the offense would be as good as it was anyway. I've been disappointed in most of the pitchers. Bubba Chandler, first part of the season, Jared Jones, second part of the season, Braxton Ashcraft. But Paul Skeens has been a disappointment really almost since day one, even though the results weren't bad at the beginning of the year. You could see there was something different. The waste pitches, like I said, the non-competitives, the velocity being down. That has been the biggest problem for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they're not coming back from this. I saw O'Neill Cruz is going out on a rehab tonight, so he may be available here. Um, in another week or so. I'm watching Valdez come to the plate here. Maybe he finds a second spark this season. Reynolds gets back to being first half Brian Reynolds, but they're done. They're done. And it's a shame because now they have a bullpen that should be able to hold leads, but I don't think they're going to get many leads to hold. I heard someone say Luke Weaver's probably looking around saying, "What am I doing here? Like, what happened? I was coming here to save games for them, and now I'm not even getting in games because we're not winning." So, look, it was sweet while it lasted this year, but it is extra frustrating when you see a team that can compete. It's not your typical dead Pirates team. This was a pretty good Pirates team this year that's just not going to get it done. The curse of the injuries and the other stuff, but they're not going to get it done. So, all right, let me see if I can find my buddy Spicoli here. I got to cue things up. There, let's see. Let me knock on the door here. What's your problem? Well, Spicoli, here's my first non-baseball issue um, of the night. Aaron Rodgers, and I know I do football on the other podcast, but I mentioned on that podcast to listen to this one for this rant. Aaron Rodgers went back on his frat boy buddies show, Pat McAfee, to presumably talk about the upcoming football season. But instead, he went on one of his diatribes. He wants to prove that he was right about COVID, just like he knew who was on the Epstein list. And Jimmy Kimmel, he threw, Aaron Rodgers thinks he has some kind of extraterrestrial knowledge. And so he went on his rant about Tony Fauci and what a bum, he should be in jail. And McAfee already had said something earlier in the week about it. And yuck it up. The frat boys that we were tough enough to beat COVID. We didn't need anything anyway. First of all, I don't even want to get into the COVID part of this because I know I am going to get for a minute. I love my doctor. I trust him with my life. My dad used to say he extended his life, my dad's life, 4 or 5 years by finding ways to massage medicines and do things to keep my dad cooking, and I mean cooking on at a good, not laying in a hospital bed or anything like that. So I trust my doctor emphatically, and he says without question that the vaccine was the right approach and continues to be the right approach to avoid the worst of COVID, not to avoid getting it, but to avoid the worst of what COVID has to offer. Um, so I'm going to take a medical professional's opinion. Look, I know there's differing opinions on that from medical people. I get that. But I'll take my doctor's advice over Aaron Rodgers and his ivermectin and uh, hydrochloroquine or whatever. And then he's got his other fools out there spouting off. Isn't that the stuff that Trump wanted us to shoot into our veins? Um, but here's my real issue with it. Because, look, people can have different opinions on that. And certainly Fauci, without hindsight being 2020, and you know how hindsight is. If you thought that back then, you like to rub it in everyone's faces. Like, I told you, I told you, I told you so. But hindsight's 2020, and certainly Fauci made some mistakes. Shutting schools down and stuff. Although that got overblown because as a teacher, my class showed up online. We had a good relationship. And I know that it's not always true. I don't always have that relationship with my classes. So I don't want to sound like I'm some teaching marvel. But we had a good relation and we got some stuff done during COVID online. Because they showed up and they cared. So COVID wasn't, being online wasn't a total wash. But anyway, that aside, Fauci definitely made some mistakes. It's fair to criticize. But here's what my beef is. Go talk football. You're a football player. How's come it is when his side of the aisle, back in the day, what was it? Wasn't it when the players were kneeling for the anthem, in protest to some things? Stick to football. I don't want to hear their opinion on stuff. I want to stick to football. But it's okay when your side wants to talk about other things. I think you should be able to talk about other things. You have a platform. You have a platform. So really, I'm not. But don't talk like he's a conspiracy theorist, Aaron Rodgers. I can't stand it. Really, he said some stuff about people that he's lucky he hasn't been sued. And he laughed. Oh, well, I'm back in good with my parents, and I've proven right about this. And now what are we going to talk about? I don't know. Football. How about you tell me how the Steelers are going to be better this year than last year? How about you tell me what it's like with Mike McCarthy back, being back under the helm with him? And how about McAfee and his frat boys that sit on stage with him and yuck it up like they're 16 years old again? How about they either get off the air or just stick to the sports talk? But isn't it funny? For all of Mike Tomlin's faults, and look, I'm as glad he's gone as anybody else. It was long overdue for a change. So when I'm about to say, don't take this as me defending and saying, boy, I wish Mike Tomlin. But we all said, well, Mike Tomlin runs a loose ship and Mike Tomlin lets the players. I don't know that that's wrong, but I do know this. Last year under Mike Tomlin, Aaron Rodgers was basically told, you're not going on the Pat McAfee show. And now Mike Tomlin's gone, and suddenly not only is he right in there on the McAfee show, he's back to his old ranting and raving conspiracy theories and stupid stuff and making the frat boys yuck it up and laugh. So, again, that's not me saying I wish Tomlin was back. It's me saying that maybe Mike Tomlin wasn't as easygoing on certain things as we might think. But anyway, and then the second part of this rant, it goes to the ESPN part. ESPN fired those people. And look, they can fire whoever they want. It's their company. Interestingly enough, after they fired Carl Ravitch, they were like, well, crap, we need someone to announce the baseball games. Carl, would you like to keep calling the games for us? And he did it. And I don't know, that's one of those ones where is he the bigger man or is he being a fool? I guess it depends how you look at it. But anyway, so they can fire who they want. And I'm not defending any of the guys they fired, but they've let their network be taken over by two loudmouths. Stephen A. Smith, who Michael Wilbon called out, by the way, um, it's only a professional like Kornheiser and Wilbon could do, um, and Pat McAfee. And I know it gets clicks, and I know the young people probably like it, and I just can't stand it. And I hate it more every day. I don't watch them, but I get clips through my Twitter feed and stuff. But that's what ESPN has devolved into. Um, letting people come on, athletes come on, and talk conspiracy theorists. Like I said, they got into trouble. They thought that was hilarious, talking about that young lady that with her dad and whoever the football player was, and they ended up had to apologize. I think we're getting sued for it. But like, give me Dan Patrick, give me Rich Eisen, give me Colin Cowherd, give me Kornheiser and Wilbon, bring back Greeny and Golick. Give me those guys who were professionals at what they did. My God, I'm more professional than Pat McAfee. And he's look good for him. I always say that anyone that finds a niche and finds a way to make lots of money, good for them. I don't begrudge anyone making as much money as you can, because people that say money can't buy you happiness, that's not true. Um, it can certainly make you happier. I'll put it that way. Um, because unfortunately, the world demands money. Um, you know, ask homeless people how happy they are, right? So don't tell me money can't buy you happiness. So kudos to McAfee for finding a niche and finding a way to make a bajillion dollars. But I don't have to watch them. I won't watch them. And I think it's a shame that that's what ESPN has turned into. When you think of some of the iconic people they used to have, the sports, and I think SVP Scott Van Pelt is as professional as it gets too. Um, and so it's not everyone at ESPN that's hard to watch, but that show with Rogers and McAfee, and if that's going to become a weekly thing again, and look at McCarthy had to say, well, everyone's has different opinions. I'm here to talk football, and Bert Larton, the spokesperson for the Steelers, had to put basically the same deal, like everyone in the locker room has their own opinions on things, and that's true. That's true. But I've said it a million times. I do enjoy listening to Aaron Rodgers talk football, because I think he's got a wealth of knowledge, and I hope he's spreading it to Drew Aller and Will Howard and even Mason Rudolph, um, and the receivers and the backs, the linemen, because I think I love to listen to him talk football, but it always ends up where it ended up on McAfee's show. And it's almost, and McAfee eggs it on, and he knows he does. And I guess, look, it's all about the clicks nowadays, and I guess that's getting the clicks. So maybe I'm the fuddy duddy, but I'm going to continue to be a fuddy duddy. I can't stand it. I have no time for it. Um, if I wanted to watch frat boys interact, I'll go to a college party where I would be stick out like a sore thumb. But I can listen to frat boys at the frat house yuck it up. I don't need to turn on ESPN and hear my frat boys talking a little bit of sports and a whole lot of other crap. So, all right, my random off topic. Two quickies here. Well, the first one's not super. I played in a golf tournament today. It's a local golf tournament in one of Lewistown, certainly in our modern era. Now, you go back to the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, the Lewistown area, the Mifflin County area had some real good athletes, real good athletes. Um, And since I was in high school, moving forward, not quite as many. And one of the great athletes in Mifflin County during that time frame was Justin Henry, who ended up going to Rhode Island and playing both basketball and football at Rhode Island. Originally went up to play football and then decided to join the basketball team. Justin was tragically struck by lightning on a vacation in North Carolina at the beach. And since his passing, his family, his mom and dad and his sister, um, have started the Justin Henry Trust Fund and give out scholarships to local high schoolers here in our community. So that one of the things they've done for I think it's got to be 25 years now, probably, is run a golf tournament. And it's there's so many people sign up. I bumped into an old high school friend who listens to the podcast. So shout out to Ron Mills. Bumped into him. He's like, "Hey, this is the only time I play golf, once a year." He's like, "I got to get new golf shoes because the soles fell out of my shoes because I only play once." So you get a lot of those kinds of people that show up for this tournament, and then you get some of the serious golfers as well. I like to think I'm a serious golfer, and the guys I play with like to think they're serious golfers. I think one of our team members, my buddy Eric's nephew Brody, is still. I think the rest of us are old serious golfers, but more old than serious. But Brody's like mid 30s, and he can hit it an absolute mile. I was like, "Do you lift weights?" And he's like, "I've never lifted weights." And he told me, he said, "I think it's my hips," and just he said, "I get through it," and he can hit it a mile. But um, it was the darndest thing today, and it became. We were actually laughing by the end of it. Um, he'd hit it out there a mile. Occasionally, one of us would hit one that we could use a drive, and then we all took turns. It seemed like it was something like everyone took turns hitting an iron. But of four guys, and a lot of times it was a wedge in our hand, like a pitching wedge. Sometimes it was from 50 yards, and we'd only get one ball on the green, and not always. Not like we didn't have one tap in a four-man scramble today. But still managed to shoot 9 under, which won't get us anything close to winning. But if you'd have seen the putts we had left, you'd say 9 under. I think I rolled three long ones in. Brody rolled three or four long ones in. Eric rolled one in. Um, and it was just one of those days. But it was a fun time. It's such a slow day because there's so many people sign up to play in it, and they do two waves, a morning and an afternoon. First of all, I was asked to get up at 7:15 to hit a golf ball, or be at the golf course at 7:15 to hit a golf ball. My life. Even golf practice in high school was 8 o'clock. So I've never hit a golf ball at 7:15 in the morning. So that could be my excuse for some of my shots today. But it was a good time, and it was fun seeing Brody. I dated his sister for 5 years, so I knew him when he was just this little guy. And to see him, he's a grown man, has a 2.5-year-old kid. It's kind of when I saw him at first today, I was like, "Holy smokes!" Um, Time flies, and here I am, old man, but it was fun. I saw some of my former students up there. Played at Lewistown. I keep saying up there. Played at Lewistown Country Club, but course was soaking wet, and the course is in really good shape. Other than it can only hold so much water, just like any other course. Greens were still really good, just wet. And then we got called off for half an hour for lightning, but we did get to go out and finish up. But good time with those guys today, Eric, Ed, and Brody, and then my other one, as we're golfing, we're getting these text messages from my friend Scott, who used to do the football podcast with me. He and Eric used to do it. They chickened out on me then, but Scott became a grandfather today. Um, so shout out to Pappy Purnell. I can't believe I'm saying those words. God, someone sent me a meme so fitting and so funny. It has a guy coming out that got gray like I do. And he said, it's really weird realizing I'm the same age as old people. And it's so fitting. Like one of my super good friends is a grandfather already. And I know when we were at our class reunion last year, and there were a lot of people that were already grandparents, and it's just I can't wrap my head around that. And I look at him; he still looks young. Other than I saw he's working on his beard. He's got a white beard like mine is when I grow it. But I just can't look at him and think that he's a grandfather. But shout out to Scott. He'll be a fantastic. I'm guessing that kid will be spoiled a little bit. He'll be a fantastic grandfather, and the kid's got great parents as well. So shout out to him, and everyone was healthy and happy. So good for them. So that will do it. I'm tired after getting up at 5:50 to make my 7:15 tea time, only to play sporadically, to put it nicely. I'm going to maybe catch a little nap. The Pirates are in a rain delay, so this would be a good time to catch a little nap, or maybe just go to bed. What the hell? Anyway, I will be back next week, hopefully a little bit more rested, and we'll see what there is to talk about. Get back and talk a little bit about golf. They'll be starting the FedEx Cup, which I know a lot of golf fans don't really care for. I'm okay with it. So we'll talk a little golf next week and see how the baseball races are shaping up as we get into middle of August next week. So until then, beat this heat, man. If you're in Central PA, beat the heat, and you know the drill. Be nice to one another.